Drives into the paint, goes inside, shot blocked by Davis.
Big time block by Anthony Davis, protecting the rim at an elite level, says not on my watch.
Would trading Anthony Davis for Damian Lillard be worth it? The NBA world often jokes about potential trades that could theoretically break the league. So in today's video, I think we've got a trade that would do just that while simultaneously surprising just about everybody. We've all heard the rumors about Damian Lillard potentially asking for a trade from the Portland Trailblazers as he grows more frustrated with the lack of NBA Finals appearances and semi-competent roster. He's been linked to a number of different teams, as NBA stars usually are, but one of the more frequent was the Los Angeles Lakers. So, what would happen if they ended up pulling the trigger on a Lillard trade? Only in this scenario, they'd have to give up Anthony Davis. Let's start this off with going over the impact on the Lakers, then we'll move our way onto the Trailblazers. Make sure you guys stick around until the end of the video as well, because we'll take our guess on what could happen to the league if these guys actually got traded this week. The Lakers, of course, are already NBA championship contenders entering the season. They had a wildly successful offseason in which they acquired a number of former All-Stars along with a group of young players that have a lot they want to prove as soon as possible. 2 years ago, this LA team with Anthony Davis and LeBron James won an NBA championship. And last season, they kind of fell flat with that first-round loss to the Phoenix Suns. Now, instead of rebuilding for a potential bounce-back year, let's say they go in a completely different direction and swap Anthony Davis for Damian Lillard. This move is assuming that it happens at this very moment, meaning all their past moves in the offseason would still be cemented in place. The Lakers signed guys like Carmelo Anthony, Rajon Rondo, Dwight Howard, Malik Monk, Kendrick Nunn, and Wayne Ellington while trading for All-Star guard Russell Westbrook. That trade cost them Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, leaving them with very little trade pieces. The Lakers might have then grown desperate for more talent and decide to offer Davis to the Blazers in exchange for Lillard and 2 first-round picks, a deal that Portland accepts quickly. Now, the Lakers enter a new year with LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, Damian Lillard, Dwight Howard, and Talen Horton-Tucker in the starting lineup. Let's be real here, that lineup would honestly still be pretty good. LeBron would bring exactly what he's always brought to his teams, and that's leadership and playmaking, allowing his teammates to get far better shots. That may be a bit awkward for Westbrook due to his usual inefficiency with outside shooting, but for Lillard, it would cause problems for opposing teams due to his sharp shooting ability and the way he operates without the ball in his hands. Those two would be a tremendous combination, but Westbrook would kind of be the odd man out. Like I just said, he's normally very inefficient in all areas of jump shooting, but when he puts his head down and attacks the rim, he's seriously explosive. But the duo of Lillard and James would take the ball out of his hands quite a lot, rendering him into a sixth man kind of role or even a catch-and-shoot player, which we all know Russ is not that. He just wouldn't fit in as smoothly anymore, plus the Lakers as a team would be severely lacking in the defense department. We all know that LeBron doesn't put much effort on that end of the floor anymore, and while Lillard and Russ play with a lot of energy, they're average defenders at best. Horton-Tucker would be solid, and Howard would be a nice shot blocker, but they'd still lack a dominant defensive presence on the perimeter. With all that being said though, I think their offense would be phenomenal, and teams would probably get confused as to who the heck to guard with all them being out on the court at the same time. They'd be one of the most effective and explosive units in the league, and the stats, I think, would certainly back that up. Now that we've covered the kinks and advantages of this potential move for the Lakers, let's talk about what their next season might look like. I would say this group would probably take some time to get used to with all the many new faces in purple and gold. They'd get off to a bit of a rocky start, but I think they'd really find their groove later in the season and stake their claim in the postseason as maybe a 2, 3, or 4 seed. They would admittedly have some trouble keeping up with wing-oriented teams like the Los Angeles Clippers. James could take one of them, but the duo of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard might be too much for them to handle defensively. I mean, who's going to guard them throughout the game? I mean, Horton-Tucker maybe, but there really isn't anybody that could do that. I see them battling their way through the playoffs and maybe eventually making it into the NBA Finals, but not without 2 7-game series and a 6-game series in the first round. They'd end up lining up against the Brooklyn Nets in the finals, and that's probably their worst matchup yet, although they are built in similar fashions. Kyrie Irving would take on Dame, and Russ would line up against James Harden. Then there'd be a little bit of a blast from the past with LeBron going up against Kevin Durant like in those past finals matchups with the Golden State Warriors and the Cavs. As much as I think this Lakers team has a chance with this lineup, their star power is just not matched here. The Nets, if healthy, are way more connected offensively, and we've seen Durant rise above James in a couple big games. I see it going about 6 games with the Nets emerging as champions and the Lakers going home without any new hardware. Make sure you guys stick around until the end of the video to hear about the potential effects a trade like this could have on the rest of the league. But first, let's talk about the Portland Trailblazers side of things on this trade. Portland would definitely be upset about giving away arguably the greatest player in their franchise's history, but the net gain wouldn't be too bad. Yeah, they lost some picks in the process, but grabbed probably the perfect player for their currently constructed roster. The starting lineup would wind up being CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, Anthony Davis, and Jusuf Nurkic. The size wouldn't be much of an issue for them at all, and their overall team defense would take a huge jump in talent. They lose some of their scoring, but I think it would only add more opportunities for the guards on this roster like McCollum and Powell. Powell specifically wasn't utilized as much as he could have been in his first year with the Blazers, and he could be a solid 20-point-per-game scorer with McCollum taking point guard duties and distributing the ball more. Davis would pick up the rest of the scoring responsibilities with his catch and shooting and mid-range size up with smaller defenders. And even Nurkic has developed a three-point shot lately, and he could spread the floor even more and try to get dirty with some offensive rebounds. Having 2 defensive anchors and incredible scoring at the guard position is a fantastic combination. As much as this trade would suck for the Lakers, I think it gives the Blazers exactly what they want right now, and they could instantly contend for the championship. I mean, honestly, their bench is not that bad right now, and the trade wouldn't have cost that much. I feel like Larry Nance was a wildly underrated trade pickup during the offseason, and that he comes in as a lob threat and defensive anchor no matter where he slots in on the rotation. Ben McLemore comes in as a knockdown three-point shooter, along with Patrick Patterson, and then they grabbed a player that's got potential in Dennis Smith Jr. Smith and Anthony Simons would be a great 1-2 punch off the bench, with Nance and newly signed Cody Zeller coming in right behind him. Surprisingly, it is a unit that would be able to hold their own against a lot of starting caliber teams if their shots are falling. Yes, it's going to take some time to get the chemistry all locked down, but that would probably come quicker than most. They would similarly struggle at the beginning, but not as much as the Lakers to start the year, and I believe that if they got some chemistry going early on, that they could wind up being maybe the 3 or 4 seed. Of course, that's barring any injuries. Then, when they enter into the playoffs, I think they could probably beat anyone who lines up across from them in a 7-game series. I think that they would struggle with the Phoenix Suns and the Clippers due to their chemistry advantages, and the Lakers would have a lot more veteran experience and clutch shooters now that Lillard's on their roster. The majority of close games would probably end up falling against Portland due to that lack of a clutch shooter and go-to scorer. It would end up being either McCollum or Davis, but neither have consistently proven to be the guy that Dame was in the fourth quarter. I see this Blazers squad battling it out the first round in a 7-game slugfest, but in the second round they'd end up falling in 6 games and get sent home early. So that's pretty much how this trade would affect both teams, but how about we talk about the effects it would have on the league as a whole? This would be a massive blockbusting trade if it were actually happen, and I would imagine a lot of teams would do everything in their power to grab a superstar player for their roster. The Brooklyn Nets might not do anything crazy if they feel like the trade was a downgrade for the Lakers, but if they feel threatened by the move, we could see them take a turn and grab another star. Maybe somebody like DeMar DeRozan or Bradley Beal would join the ranks and compete against the Lakers in the finals. Other smaller market teams would have to make moves too in order to stay competitive. The Suns, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Clippers are all among the other teams that can compete for a title this year even with the trade, but are just a piece or two away. The Bucks did win a championship last year though, so they'd likely stay put regardless of any other move. Let's be honest though, at the end of the day, this trade isn't going to happen anytime soon. Teams want nothing more than to improve and get themselves better, and while the Blazers would get exactly that, the Lakers would be trading away LeBron's best friend on the roster and closing their championship window. Their defense would struggle and they wouldn't have the size advantage that helped them dominate in the NBA bubble 2 years ago. There's just no reason for this trade to go through unless Portland were to try and go in a different direction with their trade offer. Expect Dame Time to spend at least one more season in a Portland Trailblazers uniform before he officially asks for a trade and gets flipped over to a new team in order to make them championship contenders. Well, with all that, we officially wrap up today's video on the possible trade scenario regarding an Anthony Davis for Damian Lillard swap. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content just like this. Also, make sure you hit the bell icon so that you're notified when we upload new videos. We've got a lot of exciting stuff planned in the future, and we don't want you to miss out on any of it.